Hello there, welcome back. In today's video, I have another painting that I made for Peachtober in 2024 that I didn't get to share with you guys and still really enjoyed. This painting is really interesting to me because I was being super experimental with my watercolors. I don't know what it was about Peachtober last year, but I really wanted to play around and push what I know about watercolor paints as a material and like how the rules of using them are. It was really fun to sit down and kind of play with different techniques. I think that this illustration ends up coming out with a really unique look to it. It doesn't look too much like anything else that I've really made before. I do use primarily watercolor. I don't think that I go in with gouache, but don't quote me on that because I can't remember. I really loved the effects that I was able to achieve. If you watched my last video where I showed another Peachtober drawing and it was like a little fairy character illustration, going into that one, I didn't have a whole lot of an idea of what I wanted for any of the lighting or the way I wanted to approach painting anything. But when it came to this illustration, I had a much better idea in my brain of what I wanted things to look like as far as like the background effects are and the foreground lighting. I was really excited to play with how to paint the forest in the background and how to imply the layers of trees that are in forests, and I had no idea how to paint leaves, so I was really just trying to imply that as well. It wasn't that I was trying to deliberately paint any specific object until it got to the trees that are just behind our characters. That's where I started putting more details into the logs of the tree. I also really liked playing with the lighting effect of this flower bud in the middle. The theme that inspired this illustration was bud. So I wanted the lighting scenario around the flower bud to be interesting and to really capture your attention when you're looking at this illustration. I do have one complaint about how I painted this illustration, and that is only the weird white gap at the bottom of the piece. I still haven't even cut that part off, I don't think, or thinking that maybe I should have continued to paint that part. But I just left it. I'm really happy with how this painting came out and how I was able to, once again, imply the trees in the background. If you noticed in the beginning, I layered a lot of different blues to show that the trees were super distant in the background. I think it's called atmospheric perspective. Someone said that to me at some point. And then I focused on the color of the trees in the foreground, and then there's one tree that's kind of in between the foreground and in between like the closer trees and the farthest trees, and I just mixed the brown that I used for the closest trees with the blue of the farthest trees, and that really got a very desirable effect, I think. So once the background was complete, I came back into the foreground where I had already painted in the lighting on our characters. I wanted the brightest part to be like where the direct light from the bulb was hitting our characters. I don't know how well I captured it. I was definitely going back and forth a lot while I was painting our characters, trying to figure out the best way to pull this lighting scheme across. I'm not very good when it comes to lighting. I'm finding that I have a good understanding of form, shadow, and shading, but I have a really hard time with like direct lighting on characters and whatnot. I definitely want to take some time to study that more and Maybe that's what I should be doing instead of trying to figure out value studies. I should probably be focusing on learning lighting a lot better. I feel like this piece was pretty straightforward. I just focused on where the light was supposed to be and tried my best to color accordingly. I didn't want to overwork this piece, and I wanted to keep the colors as bright and lively as I could. I have a hard time knowing whether I should focus on painting the characters or the background first. I've always heard to do the characters first because if you mess up the characters, then you don't have to throw it away and restart to fix the characters and then do the background after that. But I've always found it easier to paint the background first, even when I'm doing watercolor, so it's not like with acrylic where you paint the background first so that way you don't have to paint around the subject of the illustration. I just find that working on the background, it's probably just easier to get that out of the way quickly, considering I don't want the background to take away from the characters, so I try to make it as simple as I can. And then when I go into the characters, I don't really worry about making too many mistakes and just focus on whatever I'm trying to capture. Another thing that I think may have ruined the piece is that I didn't have a good idea of what I wanted for the characters' clothing. I obviously knew what shapes I was going with for each article of clothing, but I wasn't sure on what colors to use, so I kind of just used really basic colors. I used blue for our girl character and red for our guy character, and then tried to continue on with the shading scheme that I had. I am really proud of how I painted our flower bud. I think that it is pretty, and I like the gradient where I put some green in towards the bottom of the petals. And then the characters for this illustration are inspired off of my boyfriend and I. So on one of the trees, the tree to the right of the illustration, it has our little initials in a heart. Thought that was a cute touch because I didn't include it in the picnic illustration that I did a while back, and it was something that I wanted to include in that one. I know it was in a lot of my concept sketches and stuff, but I don't think I added it. I don't have anything else to say about this illustration. I had a whole lot of fun working on it. When I got to the end, I started adding in a lot more details into our characters, and I think that really brought the whole piece together. I hope that you enjoyed this video and enjoyed the artwork that I made, and I will see you guys next week.